Hello, people. Welcome back to another video by your good friend Chad Marco. Before I get started, make sure you attack the like button, and I'm just ripping my shirt off. Let's begin. So recently there were some pretty serious events that happened over in the Middle East, particularly around Israel. There were attacks on Israel by a group I believe has been called Hamas. They are I guess they are considered the Palestinians. They're connected with the Strip of Gaza and all of that. So I was on 4chan, as I tend to be, on the poll board, and that's when I started to seeing all these clips come up of the attacks in Israel. And there were a lot of disturbing things that I was seeing. So basically they launched an attack where they were coming in on paragliders from the sky. They were on motorcycles. They were knocking down the defenses. And I believe their first point of attack was right at a rave, a party that was going on near the southern part of Israel. And, you know, that from what I've heard, they were firing on the people at the party. I think there were about 600 people there. I've heard that maybe 200 of them got killed. There's all types of information flying around. So forgive me if I get something wrong, but there's a lot of conflicting reports, obviously, because you have a lot of chaos going on in that area right now. Then after that, there were more videos of, I've seen videos of people lying dead in their cars after being attacked by these people. There were videos of women being kidnapped and taken hostage. Basically, it was hell. it was all out hell in that portion of Israel. And so ever since then, it seems to be a more and more escalating situation where people feel like this is going to lead to an all-out war between Israel and the Palestinians, and possibly even Iran, because I believe that Iran are considered to be allies of the Palestinians. Because you can kind of look at this as a religious war of sorts, because Israel, you know, those are Israel is predominantly populated by Jewish people, and the Palestinians, in connection with, you know, other Middle Eastern countries, are predominantly Muslim, right? So you can almost say this is like a religious war of sorts. So ever since all of this has been going on, there have been more and more talks about this potentially leading to a world war, World War III. How is America going to respond? Are we going to aid Israel? Of course we are, because I'm sure it's pretty well known that Israel is one of America's closest allies. Some people are fans of that. Some people are not. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but it is what it is. But the interesting thing about this that I really didn't even see coming was that now you see on social media and in different communities, not just in America, but in other countries as well, you're seeing people kind of divided on this issue. And you see some people who are standing with the Palestinians and Gaza or Hamas, and then you have the other side standing with Israel and the Jewish community. And so you see this divide in terms of like people standing with one side or the other. And you might think on the surface that this is a pretty clear choice, right? Like, okay, naturally you would side with the people being attacked and not with the attackers, but it's really not that simple when you dig into the history between these two groups, because now I've done my 5 minutes of research, so bear with me. But from what I understand, the nation of Israel is actually relatively new. It wasn't established until, I believe, the 1940s. And depending on which side you choose to believe in, on the Israeli side, they say that they tried to establish a community, a nation in that particular area in the Middle East, and they were attacked by the Islamists. And on the Islamist side, they say that wasn't necessarily the case. They didn't just try to establish themselves in that area. They tried to establish themselves. Israel tried to establish itself at the expense of the people that were already there. And again, this is just based off of my 5 minutes of research. But when you look at that, if that being the case, you can see why people are actually divided on this issue, because it's not as simple as good versus evil. If you look at it like, okay, well, they did sort of displace this large group of people and basically kick them out of their land, if that's the narrative you choose to believe in, right? And then also you look at it in terms of like the religious aspect. Obviously, if you're someone who's Jewish, you're probably more likely to side with Israel regardless of the specifics of what happened. If you're a Muslim, you're more likely to side with the Palestinians regardless of the specifics, right? So that's the interesting part of this whole situation, is how people are taking sides on social media. You have like celebrities I've seen, even Floyd Mayweather was like, I stand with Israel. So it's crazy, man. But you might be asking, Chad, well, who do you stand with? Who do you stand with, Chad Marco? And so before I get into that, I want to play some audio of a man named David Icke. He is a man, one of my favorite people within the alternative media that I follow. And I love getting his takes on situations like this, because he always does a good job of zooming outward to see the bigger picture. And so I'm just going to play a little bit of a clip from his assessment of the situation, fair use and all that good stuff. Just going to play a little bit. But you can find the whole video by, I think it's on band.video or band.tv, David Icke, what's really happening in Israel. But I'll just play a little bit for you guys.
What is the case again? It always is with every war, is that civilians on both sides are being slaughtered. Always the case, while those that order the slaughtering stay in a safe place. When Iraqi civilians were being slaughtered with the invasion of Iraq by America and Britain, where were Boy George Bush and Tony Blair? Where were they while it was all going on? Sipping coffee in the White House and Downing Street. It's always the way. And we have Netanyahu sitting here now pontificating. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. You, mate, are doing nothing. You're sending others to do it like you always do. And the same goes for that which is really behind. Not the window dressing, what is really behind what is known as Hamas. So, first of all, the bottom line. This was not a surprise attack. Oh, yeah, well, they surprised us. Oh, really? Who do you think you're talking to? Bloody idiots? We have the Israeli Defense Forces as one of the most trained and best equipped armies in the world. And we're talking about a very small area in terms of Israel, Gaza. We have Mossad, one of the most sophisticated and widespread intelligence agencies in the world that make surveillance an art form. It's on the cutting edge.
Thanks, David Icke. Thanks for taking over there. Oh, yeah, and I apologize about my laptop fan. It's going kind of crazy if you hear it in the background, but I just want to give you guys a little snippet of that. Make sure you check out the full video. David Icke, what's really happening in Israel. He really gives a lot of good information on that situation. But you see, the point that he was trying to make, though, is that oftentimes when you look at wars throughout history and how they were instigated, you know, typically you have some sort of event or a crisis that eventually escalates towards war. It's like when you look at American involvement in World War II. Whenever you think about, okay, why did we get involved in World War II? It always comes back to Pearl Harbor. When you think about why America got involved in the war in Vietnam, one of the key moments would be identified as the Gulf of Tonkin incident, right? And in more recent history, when you think of the war in Afghanistan, of course, that's always connected to 9/11. And so you can believe in whatever conspiracy or idea or belief that you happen to believe in, you know, but the more I research these things, the more it becomes clear to me that without a doubt, some of these incidents were definitely orchestrated with the knowledge of being used as an instrument to get the people riled up to support a war. Because you got to think about it. How do you get people, ordinary people, to not only support their country and their government, their people going to war, but to also participate in that war? You have to present some sort of righteous cause. You know, and going back to like 9/11, when we're sitting here, everything is peaceful, and then these airplanes crash into the Twin Towers, the towers come tumbling down, thousands of people dead. Americans talk about an event that gets Americans riled up. So, of course, we're down to blow some shit up over that. But now I look at things so differently when you consider the possibility that these events were, if not done by design, allowed to happen, knowing that, okay, that's going to be our excuse to go to war. Which might sound crazy, right? Well, who would want to go to war? But war is very profitable. War is very profitable for certain groups, very profitable for the elites. And one of the best things about a crisis like war is that it puts a country in a situation where you can put tighter restrictions on your people. It's like when you look at 9/11, okay, we didn't just go to war with Afghanistan. Look at how things changed at the airports, for instance. Like you remember how much tighter airport security got, and then we got the body scanners and all that thing. So in the process of going to war, not only did we fuel the military industrial complex, we also gave up freedoms in the process of that. So you can see why the elites and the people in power would want us to go to war. But again, the trick is, how do you convince people to support the war and also participate in the war? There has to be some sort of event or crisis. And so when I look at this situation in Israel, now at the time I didn't know much about Israel and the issues they have with the Palestinians and whatnot. But quickly I started to gather information and put the pieces together, connect the dots, right? And one of the main things that I've learned about Israel in the past few days is that Israel has one of the most high-tech, top-notch, elite surveillance technology on the planet. And I keep hearing from various sources that there is no way that this was a surprise attack, that the inner circle, if you will, of Israel, as far as the elites, whoever is in control of, at the very top, there's no way that they didn't know that this was happening. And you got to think again, because I've heard stories about their surveillance being so good. It picks up everything from dogs to cats to insects, and they have people stationed at particular areas monitoring things. And it's like you got to be, it's almost like boot camp where you got to be laser focused on these screens. And so understanding how good the surveillance is in Israel, and also understanding what it would take to prepare an attack like this. Because remember, these are next door neighbors. How are these guys getting all these guns together, coming in through the sky on motorcycles, knocking down fences with bulldogs? How are they doing all of these things? Now remember, when you have surveillance equipment so good, you're picking up animals. Yet these guys are bulldozing fences down, coming in through the sky on motorcycles. And so basically, the speculation, the theory that I'm hearing floating around in the alternative media is that this was allowed to happen. That the top people, the powers that be in Israel, knew this attack was going to happen, and allowed it to happen to have a similar effect as Pearl Harbor in America or 9/11. Great tragedy, hundreds or thousands of people killed, hurt. And when you look at these videos, like the girls being kidnapped and screaming, and it's like, at first when I saw it, it's sad, it's tragic, but then when you look at it from this new angle, it's like, damn, like how much of this was actually done by design? How much of this was set? Because this is exactly what you would want if you're trying to get people riled up for a war. And so as I see these people in the streets of America, I've seen people in the streets of France and other countries not protesting, but showing support for their particular side, the Palestinians or the people in Israel. As I see it, I'm like, damn, we're fucked. Because look at how people are buying into it hook, line, and sinker, and ready to fight, ready to go to war, ready to escalate this situation, which is understandable. But if you actually begin to look outward and look at the bigger picture and connect the right dots, you'll see that there's a bigger culprit to this whole situation. You got to figure out who's pulling the strings. And I fear that yet again, as average people, we're being riled up, heated up, and our emotions are being used against us to get us to support a war. Just look, think about Ukraine and Russia, right? Think about before that war happened. Think about the young men in Russia, how many of those guys that are fighting today were like, you know what? I really want to go into Ukraine and start killing people. Like, I really want to go to war with Ukraine. Dude, those young men, they were playing PlayStation 5. They were thinking about how they were going to get a girlfriend. They were thinking about their future, going to college, going to get a job. They were not concerned about war. In the Ukraine, you can say the same thing. Those people were not thinking about going to war. It's always the people at the top that want war more than anyone else. But again, you got to have an incident. You got to have a crisis. You got to have an event to get the people behind you. And like I said, I fear when I look at these people getting so heated up in the streets and this whole me versus you mentality. How dare you stand with the Palestinians? How dare you stand with Israel? We're falling for it again. We're getting riled up and prepared for another war. And what's done is done. So I can't blame people to a certain extent, because obviously there were things that were done that have to be addressed. But I think moving forward, we have to know who the key players are. We have to see the full picture, because if we don't, it's just going to be another situation of a senseless war where the civilians, the average people, the boots on the ground, the young men are dying. And the children lose their fathers, and the wives lose their husbands, and the parents lose their children. And in some cases, even the innocent civilians get caught up in the battles and lose their own lives, or lose their homes, or get injured. And the ones who are 9 times out of 10 going to be okay are going to be the people who were getting the war started, the people who started the war, the people who allowed things to happen, the people who initiated the war. They're going to be the ones who are safe. They're going to be the ones who survive to live on to another day. You know, I mean, again, just think back. If you want to believe in the 9/11 conspiracy, look at George Bush. He's fine. After everything that happened, he's fine. Look at Barack Obama. A lot of people don't realize, but Barack Obama had the Barack Obama administration played a key role in expanding and prolonging the wars in the Middle East. And again, look at it. He did fine. What about the people who died? Not just on our side, but in the Middle East. So again, man, when I see this, I'm worried, because, you know, people always talk about World War III, but I think that this is probably the closest we've been to it since World War II. Because when you look at the different conflicts going on in the world, when you look at the Ukraine and Russia war, which is still going on today, when you look at Israel and the Palestinians, and especially if they get significant support from Iran, that could be another significant war. That could be another serious battle. Then you have America dipping our toes in pretty much every conflict that we can. And not only that, the open border situation. And so this is another thing that I've seen people speculating, not to hang too much on the open border situation. But I've been hearing things like some of the people coming in, they're not just coming from Mexico. They're coming from many different countries. And I'm hearing I'm hearing people saying that some of these guys coming in could be from different terrorist groups from around the world. And they could be coming to America, getting set up, getting their guns, scoping out specific targets, and getting ready to commit terrorist attacks. So I hope that's not the case. But again, we're connecting the dots here. Why the fuck are the borders wide open? It doesn't make any logical sense, right? It's pure foolishness. But then when you look at everything that's going on, just imagine that some of the people, and all it would take is a small percentage. Just imagine some of those men, most of them are grown ass men. Imagine some of those men coming in, buying firearms. They might have knowledge of how to create explosives, committing terrorist attacks, attacking public places, killing dozens, hundreds of people. And then we connect these attacks to Hamas or Iran or the Middle East. Oh my God, we've been invaded. Oh, what happened? It could happen. So if something like that happens, then you know, okay, oh, well, it all makes sense. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but you could see how the things that are going on in America, we might be, or the government might be setting up another 9/11 situation. Just think about it. You don't have to be the one that puts the money in the pocket of the person doing the attack. You just have to allow it to happen. You just got to open the back door. And so when you look at this open border situation, the government just like leaving the borders wide open, and then whatever happens. Then some shit pop off, and now we're victims. We're Israel, and now we got to go to war. I'm just saying, guys, don't fall for it. And so when you ask which side I'm on, like David Icke said, I'm on the side of the civilians. I think that it's time for people to wake up. It's time for civilians and to wake up and stand up to their governments and the people in power and be informed about these things. Because no matter what type of deceit or manipulation is used to get people to fight each other, if we are informed and we're aware of these things, then we can prevent these situations from escalating out of control. But as long as we take sides, that's exactly what they want us to do. You know, it's just like, before I end this video, you know, there's a game called Deus Ex, but the sequel is called Deus Ex Invisible War. And I'll never forget, throughout the majority of the game, you have two sides. I forgot the exact names of the two sides, but throughout the game, there's like a tug of war between these two sides that are warring against each other from the very beginning. And you as the character, you got to decide which one you align yourself with. But once you get close to the end of the game, you realize that the two groups were actually controlled by one group, right? And so that's like the big twist of the game. And so when I look at what's going on in our society now, and not just now, but again, going back to wars of the past and how a lot of them could have been potentially controlled and orchestrated by elites playing both sides, you know, it really makes you look at history much differently. But hopefully with that knowledge and with that understanding, we can move forward differently. Because like I said, there is no war if the people don't support, if the people don't participate. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I would love to get your feedback on this, and I will see you later. Chad Marco out of the building.